This is Fat to Fierce. Welcome to the Confidence Chronicles. I'm your host, Amy English. Join me on this empowering adventure towards a healthier relationship with food, body, and self, one delicious bite at a time. I often talk about the tools that I teach my clients to overcome emotional eating, like being a private investigator, practicing the pause, and listening to your body. In today's episode, I'm sharing a personal story from the early days. We're going back into the archives here. From the early days when I started using these same exact tools to change my habit of emotional eating, to change my eating patterns. So this particular story is about a brownie. Not just any brownie, a really good one. It's funny because 8 years later, this story is still very fresh in my mind, almost as if it happened yesterday. And here's what went down. So I was working from home. I had already started my coaching practice at this point. This is somewhere around 2016, again, in the early days of me overcoming the habit of emotional eating. Because again, if you've listened to any of the previous episodes, this is what I worked on while I was going through life coach training. My peers helped me overcome the habit of emotional eating. I never anticipated that this was going to become my specialty as a life coach. I was just working on it for me because I was sick of stress eating. I was tired of thinking that food had power over me. And I was tired of turning to food when life went sideways or when my workday went awry. I wanted to have control. I believed there had to be a way to have control over food and have control over my eating habits and not think that, the cookies were calling my name, all the time. And so that is what I worked on as I was going through life coach training. And it just kind of organically happened that this became my specialty as a coach because there are so many people in the world who want help with their eating habits. They want to overcome emotional eating. Okay, got a little sidetracked there. Anyway, back to the story about the brownie. So I was working in my home office. This is in the very early days of my coaching practice. And I was working from home and I was on the phone. I had hung up the phone and told myself to go get a brownie. I knew they were in the kitchen. We had purchased them from a local bakery that has really good brownies. Like we're talking like the really dense, chocolatey, gooey, good brownies. Now, I don't know about you, but I love a good brownie. And these ones were definitely some of the better ones I've had. So they're in the kitchen. I hang up the phone, tell myself to go get a brownie. And I thought to myself, oh, the brownies are in the kitchen. Go ahead and get one. You had a good breakfast today. You totally deserve a brownie. It's not a big deal. Go get one. So this is a real-time example of the conversation that would happen in my brain when I wanted something to eat, when I wanted a brownie, when I was, when I felt like food was running the show. And I would tell myself it wasn't a big deal. But it was a big deal to eat the brownie. And here's why. Again, this is back in the day, okay? This is 8 years ago. It was a big deal because I knew that I would feel like crap after eating the brownie. Physically, mentally, and emotionally. Now, at this point, I knew enough. I was far along in my journey. I was far enough along in my journey, and I knew that sugar made me feel pretty terrible. I'm very sensitive to sugar even now. Too much sugar and I will just feel awful. So I knew this. And what would happen, if I was to go ahead and eat the brownie, then I'd be mad at myself. Why? Because I gave in. I ate something that left me feeling bad. But then more thoughts would start. So there would be worry. Sugar causes cancer. I had just gotten over breast cancer. I was just finished with treatment. Would my tumor come back? That was the question. Was I making myself sick? A new tumor could start. So there's the worry, right? Because of the sugar. And then there would be shame. Shame because I should know better. I shouldn't have eaten that brownie. I should have had something healthier, right? All those thoughts that come along with shame. And then would come the anger. I have no control. There's something wrong with me. I will never lose weight if I keep this up. Some of this may sound familiar, okay? Again, it's a real-time example of what used to happen. So here's all this worry, shame, and anger, all from a brownie. But this is a real example of the mental anguish I experienced on a regular basis when it came to certain foods. We're going to call them, quote unquote, bad foods. Now, I do not use that language to describe food anymore. I don't use the words good or bad to describe foods. We're going to save that topic for another episode. But in this case, since we're going back in time a little bit, this is the anguish I experienced when it came to certain bad foods like the brownie. Because it's almost like I was torn between the freedom of letting myself eat what I wanted without any stress and the frustration knowing it would bring me down and send me into this spiral that I've just described. So it was like the brownie would give me an instant of joy, but then followed by a day of regret and beating myself up. This was the loop. And if you're familiar with the loop, then you probably know it can be a little bit stressful, which then would lead to more emotional eating. Okay. And this is what those of us who've struggled with emotional eating, this is the trap that we can get stuck in. Before I continue with my story, I really want to be crystal clear that there is absolutely nothing wrong with enjoying a brownie. There's nothing wrong with a brownie, okay? But at this time of my journey, I wanted to understand more about me and my urge to eat that brownie, and also the shame cycle that happened after eating the brownie, because it's all part of it, right? It's understanding that urge, that need to go eat that brownie, the desire to go eat that brownie. But then also there was the whole cycle of shame, worry, shame, anger, guilt that came after I would eat the brownie. It's all part of the emotional eating cycle. And I just wanted to understand that better for myself. So on this particular day, instead of diving into the brownie, instead of just, on autopilot going into the kitchen and getting that brownie, I decided to spend a few minutes writing in my journal. I decided to write a little bit about why I wanted to eat the brownie, why I was having the urge, the desire, that, call it a craving. A craving is really the same as an urge or a strong desire, right? But I decided to write in my journal about why I wanted this brownie. This is the private investigator. So in that moment, as I'm journaling, I ask some questions. What was happening in my life the moment I wanted that gooey, delicious, chocolatey brownie? So I take a moment to retrace my steps like any good detective does, right? What was happening? Well, I was working on my coaching business. I hung up the phone. I wrote an email. I talked to my mom. I started researching ads for my business, my coaching practice. Boom, there it was, the brownie. That was when the brownie first surfaced in my mind. So the next question, why do business ads trigger my desire for a brownie? And as I started exploring this, now this is all done with curiosity. Curiosity is a very important piece to unraveling the emotional eating puzzle. Curiosity and compassion, okay? Because you don't want to do this by being a jerk to yourself. You want to use curiosity and compassion so you can explore it and with some understanding and by being your own ally, okay? Not a jerk to yourself. So, why does working on business ads trigger the brownie? Well, as I took a closer look, ads made me think about marketing. More specifically, they made me think about marketing myself. That's putting myself out there as a life coach. A brand new profession, outside of what I was familiar with, definitely outside of my comfort zone. And with that came all sorts of questions. What will people think? What will people say? Can I even do this? Will this even work? So there was this idea that the world would see me outside of my comfort zone. And I just wanted to hide with my brownie. I wanted to stay covered and hidden. This is very important information, all from just sitting down with my notebook and journaling a little bit and being that private investigator. This is all the stuff that came up as I was exploring with curiosity and compassion. So in this rabbit hole of self-doubt and judgment, I asked myself some questions. Here's where parts of the pause come in. Am I hungry? In that moment when I wanted the brownie and all this other stuff is coming up, am I hungry? No, not physically. I wasn't. It was soon after breakfast. I know this because I wrote it all down. I still have the journal. Actually, I wrote a blog about this back in 2016. So if you wanted to go to my website, you could read all about it. I wrote the blog soon after it actually happened. So am I hungry? No. Does the brownie have the answers that I'm looking for? No. Will the brownie help? Will the brownie help with the marketing? Will the brownie actually help me hide? No, of course it won't. It's just a brownie. So with those answers, I then decide to tune into my body for support. So this is the act of listening to my body. And this is really important. I mean, it's all important, but listening to your body is so incredibly helpful when it comes to understanding your relationship with food and overcoming the habit of emotional eating. And that's because our bodies, our physical form, our bodies are constantly communicating with us. They are always sending signals. You know how sometimes you'll get a gut feeling about something? That's your body sending you a signal, sending you a sensation. And you can use those signals and sensations to guide your decisions, including your decisions about food. The signals your body sends can help guide your food choices. The key is just to pay attention to the sensations that you're feeling. So in this instance, I decided to try this. It was actually the first time I used my body as a way to decide if I wanted to eat this brownie or not. And here's what that looked like. So I imagined both scenarios and noticed what I felt in each one. So first, the first scenario, I imagined myself eating the brownie, okay? I imagined I pictured myself going into the kitchen, getting the brownie out of the container and putting it in my mouth, chewing it, eating it. And as I was picturing this, I noticed, so I'm picturing this, I'm imagining this, right? And I'm noticing what sensations I feel in my body as I'm picturing this. And I noticed that my stomach felt tight. I started to feel nauseous as I was imagining myself eating this brownie. I could actually feel it coming up and almost like I wanted to gag. It was really interesting. So I kind of shook that off and had the second scenario. So next, I imagined not eating the brownie. I pictured myself doing something else, continuing with my work, going for a walk, listening to a song, doing something different, not eating the brownie. And what I noticed in my body is that the nauseous feeling was gone. I felt lighter physically. The tightness that had been in my stomach was no longer there. The tightness was gone. And so at that moment, it was clear my body did not want the brownie, because feeling nauseous and tight and like I wanted to gag, that was a clear no. Feeling light, no longer nauseous, that tightness not there, that was a sign of moving in the right direction for me in that moment. And so I decided not to eat the brownie. But I was still curious, because what about my mind? Why was my mind telling me to eat the brownie? Well, it's because I knew the brownie would comfort me. It was like a big hug telling me everything would be okay. I often say a warm brownie is like a warm hug. And the thing is, I used food that way for a very long time. Food was always the friend who wouldn't make fun of me. Food was the friend who didn't criticize what I was wearing or how I looked. Food was just always there. It was quiet and loving, and it left me feeling good in the moment. Food had become my drug of choice to help me escape, or rather provide the illusion of escape, because I didn't really get to escape. But then, okay, having this relationship with food, but then it always created a mess in my head of all the guilt, shame, anger, and fear. And as I mentioned earlier, that's all the fuel that keeps the emotional eating cycle spinning. Now, seeing how that cycle exists, paying attention to it, recognizing it, is the only way to do anything about it. That's how you begin to heal. So, as I mentioned, on this particular day, I chose not to eat the brownie. And here's the thing. Many times, all we need is to pause long enough to be able to make a conscious decision. Whether or not I ate the brownie really didn't matter. The key was being able to make a choice that I felt good about, that I felt better about. And honestly, seeing how I was using the brownie to feel better, that was a gift. That really helped me see how I was using food is that instant relief, that instant gratification, that dopamine hit, as they call it, that instant feel good. But in the end, it really didn't feel good, and many times made me feel worse. Here's the deal. Changing your relationship with food is a journey. Now, I would love to sit here and tell you that after this particular story, after this day, 8 years ago, everything was fine and I never ate emotionally again. And that would be a lie, because this was just one example of many throughout my journey of overcoming my habit of emotional eating. It's not a race, and there really is no quick fix. It just takes time, patience, curiosity, as I mentioned, and a whole lot of self-compassion. And the thing is, you don't have to do it alone. You can work with a coach just like me who's been there and who gets it. I understand emotional eating probably better than most, and I know how to fix it. So to learn more, go ahead and head to my website and book a discovery call. That's your first step, and it's a big one. I hope this episode resonates for you and sheds some light on your path to overcome emotional eating. Until next time. Are you ready to take control of your eating embrace your body, and boost your confidence? Then let's get fierce. Start your Fat to Fierce journey today. Go to amyenglishcc.com for more resources and to book your discovery call.